The crystal chandeliers of the Eldridge Hotel ballroom cast dancing shadows across the polished marble floors. Every facet of glass caught the flicker of warm candlelight, turning the grand space into a fairy tale painted in gold. Clara Mendes adjusted the thin strap of her navy ghoul silk gown. Her fingers trembled, not from the cold, but because she still couldn't believe she was standing in the middle of such an extravagant charity gala. Around her, women floated by in sweeping couture gowns, necklines daring and diamonds glinting like stars. The men wore sleek tuxedos, patent leather shoes and colognes that clung to the air like invisible status symbols. She didn't belong here, and she knew it. But her firm had provided free urban design consulting for a struggling neighborhood, a project that caught the attention of the City Development Foundation. As a gesture of recognition, they'd sent her this invitation, a ticket into a world she'd only glimpsed through glossy pages. Until tonight. "You look like you're about to bolt," a warm voice said behind her. Clara turned to see Jonas Becker, her colleague and one of her few friends in the industry. He handed her a glass of champagne and smiled gently. "Relax, Clara. You earned your place here." She accepted the drink and tried to smile. "I feel like Cinderella lost in the palace. Except my fairy godmother is my savings account, and this dress cost me 3 months' rent." Jonas laughed. "That midway redevelopment you led saved the city millions. No one else pulled that off, especially not for free." Clara sipped the champagne, letting the bubbles dissolve on her tongue as her eyes scanned the sea of glittering guests swarming around glistening ice sculptures. Everything was so beautiful it felt foreign. "Over there," Jonas murmured, tilting his head toward the ballroom entrance. "Looks like things just got interesting." Clara turned, and time froze. A tall man had just stepped through the grand archway, and the room responded like metal to a magnet. Conversations dulled. Laughter paused. The atmosphere shifted in an instant. She didn't have to ask. Ethan Langford. Heir to Langford Development, a national powerhouse in real estate. Wealthy, enigmatic, and the driving force behind dozens of urban revitalization projects. Known for staying out of the public eye, until now. He wore a tailored Tom Ford black velvet tuxedo that hugged his broad shoulders and tapered waist with effortless precision. A crisp white shirt gleamed beneath the jacket, adorned with subtle platinum cufflinks inset with black pearls. On his wrist, a slim Patek Philippe watch peeked beneath his sleeve, a quiet luxury. His Italian leather shoes reflected the ballroom lights like glass. A whisper of Creed Aventus lingered in the air around him, an invisible signature of power and restraint. Ethan moved through the crowd with the composed grace of a man who owed nothing to anyone. Each step was purposeful but unhurried, confident without arrogance. His sharp gaze scanned the room and then landed on her. Clara froze. His eyes, dark, observant, and startlingly aware, met hers and held, just for a second, but it felt like forever. She felt exposed under that gaze, not in shame, but in recognition. He saw her, truly saw her. "Oh God," she breathed. And deep down, Clara knew this moment would change everything. Clara couldn't quite remember the exact moment Ethan Langford started walking toward her. Time warped, slowed, and sped up in uneven pulses as if the universe was adjusting itself. What she remembered clearly was the erratic drumbeat of her heart. As he came closer, the entire ballroom seemed to hush. Conversations faded. His footsteps echoed faintly against the marble, growing louder with each stride. Ethan stopped in front of her, his calm eyes meeting hers, not intruding, just present. "Good evening," he said. His voice was rich, deliberate, confident without arrogance. Clara tried to stay composed. "Good evening. Are you the host of this party?" "Not quite," he smiled, a quiet, slanted grin that seemed to cut through the air. "Just one of the people who keeps getting roped into these charity things." She chuckled, surprisingly at ease. "I wasn't planning to come either. My invitation was accidental." Ethan tilted his head, studying her. Clara Mendes, right? She blinked. Yes? How do you know that? I read the report on the Midway project, he said. You redesigned the whole district. It was a compassionate blueprint. Clara shrugged, modest. I was just trying to make something useful for the city. And you did, he said. Few people use knowledge to create real change. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but gravitational. Would you like to get some air? Ethan asked. I know a place. It might feel a bit more breathable. Clara hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, but a quieter, stronger part nodded. He led her from the ballroom to a sleek, black SUV waiting at the curb. Where are we going? She asked, curious. Skyview Observatory, he replied. I funded their simulated star room. It closes to the public at 9, but I have keys. Clara blinked. Why a planetarium? Ethan smiled faintly. Because I used to want to be an astronaut. Seriously? He nodded, leaning back. When I was a kid, my dad used to take me out to the backyard and show me the stars. He'd say the universe was just waiting for people brave enough to meet it. I grew up dreaming of space. I even studied astrophysics for a while in college. What changed? My dad died suddenly when I was 20, he said, eyes darkening. And my mother, she wasn't the kind to entertain dreams. She told me to come home, face reality, and take over the business. I dropped everything, never went back. Clara was quiet. Then softly, so the man who built cities once wanted to leave the planet. He looked at her. Sometimes I think rebuilding neighborhoods is the only way I know how to fix the emptiness I couldn't reach. They arrived at the observatory. The guard waved them in. Inside, under the dome, Clara gasped. The sky above them was a moving tapestry of stars, shifting in slow orbits, the Milky Way curling across the ceiling like a brushstroke in a Van Gogh painting. Ethan stood beside her in silence. Together they looked up, two souls quietly reverent beneath a galaxy of light. It's breathtaking, Clara whispered. It's not real, Ethan replied, but sometimes the things that aren't real touch us more deeply than the ones that are. She turned toward him. The artificial starlight lit Ethan's face, and for a moment he seemed to glow from within. They didn't need words. He leaned in. She rose up. Their first kiss was unhurried, honest, a slow confession of presence and possibility. Not fire, not frenzy, but recognition. I see you. I feel you. When they pulled apart, neither of them spoke. But their eyes had already said everything. Everything after that night at the observatory felt like a dream, soft, surreal, and impossible to resist. Ethan Langford started showing up in Clara's life more frequently, not loudly, not intrusively, but steadily, patiently, like waves quietly melting the ice around her guarded heart. A message each morning, a cup of coffee delivered to her office on stressful afternoons. A surprise dinner at a tiny bistro serving lasagna made exactly the way she once casually mentioned liking. Clara didn't know when she started waiting for him. She couldn't pinpoint the moment her lunch break became incomplete without hearing his voice. Every time Ethan looked at her, really looked, she felt like she belonged. They began to share the hidden pieces of themselves. Clara spoke of her childhood in the south end of the city, growing up with her mother in a stuffy apartment cooled only by a ceiling fan. Ethan spoke of a gilded cage, his youth under the Langford name, where every choice was curated and every joy monitored. 1,000-square-meter mansion, yet not a corner to feel truly seen. Clara realized that behind all the polish and charm, Ethan was a lonely soul, much like herself, only better at hiding it. And then, on an unplanned evening after a charity concert, under the wide branches of a lone oak tree near the city square, Ethan stopped walking. The golden glow of a nearby street lamp brushed his features in soft light. Clara, he said quietly, I'm not good with things that move too fast, but with you, everything feels too slow. She frowned slightly in confusion until Ethan gently placed a hand on her cheek and kissed her. The second time, the first in the real world, that kiss wasn't like the one under the artificial stars. This one held yearning, promise, and something close to forever. 2 weeks later, Ethan proposed. No fanfare, no crowd, just a quiet Sunday morning in his kitchen, while Clara rinsed glasses at the sink, her hands still dripping with water. Marry me? Simple words, yet in his eyes it was a vow. Clara turned to him, and tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Yes, she said, without hesitation. From afar, in her glass-walled office on the 47th floor of Langford Tower, Victoria Langford watched silently. She had already known about Clara thanks to the private reports she'd quietly commissioned. To Victoria, anyone not of the right class posed a threat to the Langford legacy, and Clara, with her modest background, was unacceptable. No drama, no rush, just quiet calculation. Victoria began to plan, discredit, divide, and if necessary, destroy. Clara had never dreamed of a fairy tale wedding. To her, marriage was a far-off possibility, like dreams kept on dusty shelves, untouched since childhood. But that morning, with sunlight pouring into the polished wood floors of Langford Estate, as florists adjusted the final details under the wedding arch, Clara stood silently in front of the mirror and asked herself, "Am I awake? Or borrowing someone else's dream?" Her silk and chiffon gown hugged her frame softly, elegant, not ostentatious. A bouquet of white jasmine in her hand, reminiscent of early dates with Ethan, made her smile. He once said, "Jasmine smells like unspoken emotions, delicate but haunting." She walked slowly down the aisle by the lake in Vermont, where fall had set the forest ablaze in red and gold. Each step echoed inside her, not from nerves but from sheer awe. Ethan stood at the end, in a smoke-grad tuxedo, looking at her as if this moment had always been waiting. When the officiant asked for vows, Ethan's voice trembled slightly, but his eyes held firm. "I won't promise to never fail, but I promise to always learn how to love you with everything I know and everything I've yet to learn." Clara's heart broke open. She nodded and whispered yes, like it was the most certain thing in the world. But neither of them saw the figure above on the second-floor balcony behind a curtain of white. Victoria Langford watched. She didn't smile, didn't cry. She simply observed, like a cold artist awaiting her moment to shatter the canvas weeks earlier. She had set everything in motion. When she saw how Ethan looked at Clara, with a love too raw to be strategic, she knew. This wasn't just affection, it was danger. True love, in her world, was a fatal flaw. She hired a private intelligence firm, instructing them to find weakness or manufacture it. When they came back with nothing, she fabricated it. Forged emails, a leaked development contract bearing Clara's fake signature, a bank transaction, falsely implicating her in dealings with Holland Western Group. It was flawless. And Ethan, raised to believe in evidence, wouldn't question what was too perfectly presented. And she was right. On week after the wedding, as Clara booked hotel rooms in Lisbon for their honeymoon, Ethan was handed the file by a trusted executive. "You may want to see this," the man said, and left. Ethan read it. Every page, every damning detail. His hands shook. His heart screamed, but his mind, trained under Victoria's influence, told him to protect himself. When Clara got home, he sat in the dark, a lamp casting shadows across his face. "Ethan?" she asked. He stood, handed her the folder Clara read in silence. Her blood froze. "This is fake," she whispered. "Someone—" "They were very thorough," he replied. "You think I'd betray you?" she asked, voice cracking. He looked at her, not angry, just empty. "I've lost everything once," he said. "I won't lose again because I ignored a mistake." "So you won't even ask me?" "I'm choosing what's left." Clara didn't argue. She took off her ring, placed it on the table. Didn't cry, but her heart, where hope once lived, was now ash. She left the next morning, and Ethan sat frozen in place, unable to move beneath the weight of what he'd done. Above, Victoria held her wine glass and whispered, "Welcome back, my son." The door clicked shut behind Clara like the final beat of a farewell song. But in that moment of collapse, somewhere deep in the ashes of her shattered vows, a seed began to stir. Seattle welcomed her with gray skies and quiet rain. Mist clung to the lake, buildings mirrored themselves across the still water like upside-down memories. Clara didn't know why she chose this city. Maybe because here no one knew her name. She rented a tiny apartment, barely large enough for a bed, a desk, and the few dreams she still carried. For weeks she lived in silence. No social media, no texts, new number, new name. Clara Mendes was gone. She became Clara Carter, a name with no past attached. But the past doesn't leave easily. At night she dreamed of Ethan's eyes, not when he loved her, but the way he looked at her like a stranger. That gaze pierced her deeper than any accusation ever could. By day she walked through struggling neighborhoods, watching kids play barefoot on broken sidewalks and mothers wave from crumbling balconies. In those streets she saw herself as a child, and in helping them she began sewing herself back together. She wrote a pro bono proposal to stop the forced relocation of a low-income housing block. Weeks later, the city replied they'd review the project. From there, she never stopped. Using what savings she had and the reputation she'd earned from a lifetime of strategy work, Clara launched Phoenix Strategic Solutions, a consulting firm focused solely on ethical community development. Her team was made of young architects, social workers, and single mothers hungry for a second chance. She earned trust project by project, rebuilding neighborhoods with light, trees, and dignity. Soon, Clara Carter was whispered in Seattle planning circles like a quiet legend. No one knew where she came from, but her work spoke louder than any PR campaign. Her success was steady, never flashy, quiet, honest. By the end of the year, Phoenix was invited to a national planning conference. Clara was the keynote speaker, standing under stage lights with her cropped hair and calm voice. No one recognized the woman once swept into a scandal no one dared name. Even she barely recognized herself. But late at night, when the office emptied, Clara still stayed. Not because of work, but because of silence. Success dressed her in armor, but the heart beneath was still tender. She no longer cried, but she still remembered, vividly. She remembered the day Ethan handed her that folder, the fact that he never asked, that he didn't need truth, only something safe. She had forgiven, but forgetting? That came slower. Sometimes in the quiet she'd wonder, if he had just asked me once, would everything be different? Then she'd exhale, not with regret, but with understanding. Because some people aren't brave enough to believe in love, and some must be brave enough to walk away when they're not believed. Clara Carter wasn't the girl trembling in ballrooms anymore. She was the woman who built value not from diamonds, not from legacy, but from scars and truth. And one quiet evening, gazing out over the sleeping city, she whispered to herself, "I don't need to become someone else. I only need to be me, and that is enough." Victoria Langford believed she had won. Ever since Clara disappeared from Ethan's life, she never spoke of her again, at family dinners, in boardroom meetings, in every polite expression. Victoria exuded the calm of a mother who had protected the legacy. But Ethan was no longer the same. He moved like a ghost through his penthouse, far bigger than Clara's old apartment. He worked, signed deals, gave speeches, but there was no soul behind the success. And though Victoria never admitted it, she saw it too. Her son was not happy. Then one day, Emma Delaney, Victoria's former assistant of 15 years, knocked on Ethan's office door. She entered with a conflicted expression, holding a small USB drive. "There's something you need to see," she said, placing it on his desk. Ethan frowned. "Emma, what is this?" "I quit," she cut in, "and I can't live with myself unless I tell you." Under the dim office light, Ethan opened the files, audio recordings of calls between Victoria and a private intelligence firm. Her voice rang out, crisp and cold. Create a believable file. Link her to Holland Western. I don't care how forged it needs to be. Just make sure Ethan believes it. Also included the raw, unsigned draft of the fake contract and internal chat logs between Emma and a technician. Are you sure about this? It could destroy someone's life. Just following orders, but let's keep the original just in case. Ethan didn't move. The USB drive lay on the desk like a pulsing wound. Each word felt like a dagger. Ethan didn't just feel anger. He felt something collapse within him. He lowered his head, and for a long time, he didn't move. The office around him seemed too large, too silent. Every decision he'd made, every moment of silence, every time he'd chosen pride over love, now screamed back at him. He hadn't asked. He hadn't believed. He handed Clara a sentence and never let her speak. And now the truth was here, and everything was too late. 2 hours later, the boardroom doors flew open. Ethan walked in, holding printed files from the USB. Victoria turned, annoyed. "Ethan, we're in a meeting." "I won't waste time on formalities," he said sharply. He tossed the documents onto the table, pages scattered, emails, audio transcripts, the fake contract, chat logs. Silence. Victoria glanced at them and understood. "I don't know where you got this garbage," she said evenly. "Emma," he replied. "The only one around you with a conscience." She tried to explain. "You don't understand." "No," Ethan snapped. "You don't understand. You destroyed her. You destroyed me. For what? Image? Bloodline?" His voice cracked. "I found someone who made me feel whole, and you extinguished it." For the first time, Victoria's calm cracked. "You're being irrational. I've already removed you from the board. A majority vote effective today." Her hand trembled. "You can't." "I can. I did." He turned away, then stopped. "And from today, you're no longer my mother." That night, he sat alone in his penthouse, lights off. The glow of his laptop screen was the only light. He clicked through old photos, Clara smiling, laughing, watching him in quiet understanding. The silence now was cold. He knew what he had to do, find the woman he'd broken. He flew to San Francisco, Boston, Miami, anywhere Clara might have gone. No trace. Then, at an urban design conference in Chicago, someone mentioned Clara Carter reviving low-income neighborhoods in Seattle. His heart stopped. He booked the earliest flight to Seattle. Not with certainty, but with hope. Hope that even a shattered heart might still have room to forgive. Seattle, Saturday afternoon. Rain drizzled gently. Ethan stood in front of the brick building housing Phoenix Strategic Solutions. His heart pounded. He'd flown 3,000 miles, searched for weeks, just to stand here gripping a letter he'd written and torn apart 100 times. No words seemed right. No reason seemed forgivable. The glass door of Phoenix Strategic Solutions closed behind Ethan with a soft thud. The space inside smelled of pine and dried jasmine. The scent hit him like a memory he wasn't ready for. He sat in the waiting area, clutching a folder he'd rewritten 100 times, not to give, but to hold on to, as if it anchored what little courage he had left. He had never felt more unsteady, not out of fear of rejection, but the fear of seeing nothing in her eyes. No warmth, no hurt, just indifference. 12 minutes passed. Then the conference room door opened, and there she was. Clara walked out, calm and composed, in a pale beige suit. She wasn't striking. She was stunning. In that way, only truth and pain can shape a person. Her eyes found his, and she stopped. There was no anger, no surprise, just stillness. "Ethan," she said softly, "why are you here?" He stood, like someone waking from a long, painful dream. "I came to say I'm sorry," he said, "not to ask for forgiveness, just to tell you I was wrong, so wrong, and I see it now, too late." His voice cracked. "I believed a lie instead of the woman I loved." I never asked you. I let silence kill what we had." Clara stood still. Every word he spoke stirred memories she thought she'd buried. His cold gaze, the folder full of lies, the sound of the door closing behind her. She thought she'd moved on, but pain doesn't vanish. It sleeps. And today, it woke up. Her chest tightened. But then she saw something she never saw in Ethan before. Genuine regret. Not to fix it, not to win her back, but because he knew he'd destroyed something real. She took a breath. "You know what hurts?" she said. "It's not that you didn't love me. It's that you didn't choose to believe me." He lowered his gaze. "I've learned to live without trust," she continued, voice trembling. "I rebuilt myself, every stitch sewn with sleepless nights." He stepped forward, didn't touch her, just whispered, "I'm not asking for another chance. I just hope that if even a piece of your heart remembers me, that piece is what's keeping me alive." Silence. Then Clara whispered, "I do remember you, but I remember myself more." And she reached out her hand, not to embrace, not to pull him back, just to touch, to say what we had was real. It hurt, but it mattered. And in that quiet moment, they cried, not from pain, but from finally truly understanding each other. Dean left that meeting without a word. No texts, no calls, no following. Just every Monday morning, a small bouquet of white jasmine would appear on the steps of Phoenix Strategic Solutions. No note, no sender's name. Clara knew. By the second week, she knew. Around the same time, she received a letter from a nonprofit announcing a new grant for urban renewal. In a list of recent donors, a small name appeared: Ethan Langford. No title, no fanfare. No grand gestures, no pressure. Just presence. Quiet, consistent presence. Clara didn't respond, but every time she saw those flowers, something stirred inside, warmth and fear. She had been brave enough to walk away, but was she brave enough to return? Clara didn't respond, but every time she saw those flowers, something stirred inside, warmth and fear. Because to feel again was to risk again. She remembered the way his silence sliced through her like glass. The night she left, she vowed never to wait by the door again, never to soften just because something looked like love. But people change, don't they? Or was hope simply the last lie she hadn't unlearned? She had been brave enough to walk away, but was she brave enough to return? On the fourth week, Phoenix was honored at a national conference. Clara accepted the award with grace. As the spotlight hit her, she spotted Ethan standing at the back of the hall, watching, silent. Just one glance enough to make her breath catch. At night, Clara sat at her laptop, typing out an email. She stopped halfway instead. She picked up her phone, scrolled to a number she never deleted, and sent a single message. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., the old place. No emoji, no explanation. Ethan read it near midnight. He didn't reply, but he smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in a very long while. The restaurant was the one they went to after their first stargazing date. Still warm lights, same corner table. Same pasta dish she always ordered. Clara arrived first. Ethan walked in minutes later. For a moment, neither said a word. Then their eyes met, without hurt, without fear, and the door of hope quietly opened. Over gentle clinks of cutlery and soft, unsure smiles, they began again. No promises, no rush. A second chance, honest, unspoken, and real. Dinner ended with 2 quiet glasses of wine. Neither wanted to leave. Neither dared to stay. In the hush of Seattle's night, one truth still hung between them, unspoken. As they stepped outside, a soft breeze carried the scent of jasmine. Clara turned slightly toward him. "Is there something you still need to say?" Ethan stopped, took a long breath, then spoke. I didn't leave you because of my mother, or that contract. They confused me, yes, but the truth is, I was scared, terrified. Clara didn't reply. Her eyes softened. You loved me more than anything I'd ever known, and that terrified me. I grew up in a world where love always had conditions. Then you came, real, whole, and I felt undeserving. His voice cracked. I hurt you first so I wouldn't be the one hurt later. Clara stood still. His words cut, but not in a way that wounded, in a way that revealed. Tears welled up, not from blame, but understanding. So that's it, she whispered. You didn't leave because you doubted me, but because you were afraid to be loved. He nodded, eyes rimmed with red. I thought I wasn't enough, she said, but now I see it wasn't me who lacked. It was you who lacked the courage. He stepped closer, gently brushing her cheek. Clara, if I've found that courage now, if I'm no longer running, she met his gaze, heart trembling. Will you give me a chance, not to fix the past, but to build something new? Clara didn't speak. Her eyes glistened with tears, hesitating not from doubt, but from remembering how much it hurt to hope. But this man, this version of Ethan, was different. Stripped of pride, stripped of fear, she placed her hand on his and slowly leaned in. That night they were together, not as they once were, not as the betrayer and the betrayed, but as two broken people choosing to heal in each other. In the candlelit stillness, after breathless moments and whispered apologies, Ethan knelt, not with a ring, not with a grand gesture, just a simple please. This time, I'm not asking you to be my wife. I'm asking for a promise. Let's rebuild this love. Slowly, truly, and without giving up. Clara smiled through her tears and nodded. And so, their love didn't begin again where it ended, but where they finally understood one another. Clara didn't nod right away. She looked into Ethan's eyes for a long moment, as if to make sure this time he wasn't here out of emotion, but from a choice made deep in his heart. And she smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just a quiet, honest smile. I say yes, she whispered, not because I forgot what happened, but because I believe the future can be different. Ethan squeezed her hand, tears escaping, but this time they were tears of someone who had learned to love the right way, with patience, with courage, and with faith. The next morning, sunlight poured through Clara's apartment window, golden and soft, like a silent blessing. He stepped out first, wrapped in a simple wool coat. Ethan followed, hand gently at her back. They held hands, unafraid, unhesitant, as two people who now understood, love isn't flawless. It's choosing to carry the cracks together and still move forward. And this time, there were no shadows behind them, no whispers, no fear, no conditions. Just two hearts, once broken, now whole again, choosing each other, freely and truly.